CEO Roundtable, Driving Industry Innovation. How exciting it is for WBC to have 4 amazing women CEOs with our moderators and 4 different industries. And just to remind you, we are data-driven and story-driven as the only women's business movement with our 50 women business organization partners to really drive the change for gender parity with equal position pay and power. So with that, we do have our first initiative was Women CEOs. And with Catalyst and Committee of 200, we published an annual report. The first was in September 2020. And just to remind you, we look at Fortune, which is 8.4%. We were at 5.7% 3 years ago. We're hell-bent to get to 10%. But we also look at the Russell, we look at private companies, and we look at some industry breakdowns. So we're thrilled to have the CEOs that we've got today, but you'll be watching for that report. We monitor the C-suite, and I think as you see on the board of directors, we work with Equilar to do a report every month on the new women being named versus men to all public boards. And for the first time in our nation's history, April hit 44% women being named to boards. And with that, about 23% women of color, because we must make sure that our sisterhoods of color join us in that journey. We cover 9 areas, including diversity and parity and women in technology, women in capital. So it's just a joy with that. I think we want to invite you to all of our events, our big summit that is in September 21st, 22nd. We'll talk about that at the end of the call. But as we think about 4 different industries today, if we look at wealth management, we look at the whole food and ag industry, we look with Phyllis Newhouse all the way from technology and artificial intelligence to the role of being an entrepreneurship who goes big. And we think through very, very much on thinking about, as we look at Brookville Senior Living, that we've got a whole healthcare industry that is so important. So we are really appreciative of 3 people today. Our 2 moderators, Robert Reiss, who's all 3 are on our board of directors. Robert Reiss, the CEO Forum Group, and Becky SHAMBAUGH, CEO of SHAMBAUGH Leadership, who will be our moderators. And we're thrilled to include the 3rd member of the committee, Jose Celester, CEO of Gender Fair, who rates 5,500 companies for data. But with that, we'll turn this over to Robert and Becky. Thank you for joining us. Give us your feedback, join the movement, and thank you.
Way to go, Edie. Thank you. And welcome also my partner in crime. Becky is going to be doing the interviews with us. Today is really exciting because obviously our goal is equal pay, position, and power for all business women. And we're searching, trying to get more women of color in the 23%. It's not where we want to be, but we're moving forward a lot. We're representing all different industries, as mentioned, like healthcare, financial services, military as well, you know, and entrepreneurship and retail, fast food. And I'm going to let you know who some of the CEOs are. Becky and I will do about a 10-minute interview with each of them. And then Jose will do her award-winning summary. And then we'll hear more also about the annual summit as well. So our first speaker, I'll just let you know who they are now, is Cindy Baier. And she's the CEO of Brookdale. This is, I believe, the largest and definitely award-winning. It just won top 10 in healthcare in America. by the CEO Forum Group, senior living, $3.5 billion, about 45,000 employees, over 700 locations. And what you're going to hear specifically from Cindy is how you become a CEO, what it's like when you're a CEO, and what are some of the key moves that you should do early on. Next is going to be Catherine Keating, and Catherine is CEO of Wealth Management at BNY Mellon. And here's something some of you may not realize, but if you look at high net worth, Elizabeth Hamilton, I believe, was the first in high net worth from Alexander Hamilton, the founder. So this is really the first women-driven high net worth organization in the world. This is 200 years ago. And really, Catherine has been in what is primarily for years been a male-dominated industry, and she has broken through so many ceilings, but she's doing incredible work now, managing over 292 billion with a B in assets. And she's going to talk about things like, well, right now, about a third of the wealth, I believe, is managed by women. But how do we create the right balance moving forward, as certainly the capital markets are the driver of the economy? Third, Phyllis Newhouse. And Phyllis is a powerhouse. And she was talking before with me about numbers and the importance, but not only does she have a military background, and she's doing heavy duty stuff like cyber espionage, but then after that, she moved and became a complete award-winning entrepreneur with Xtreme solutions that most people know about, and then more recently with ShoulderUp. And you'll hear about it, and she'll talk about the numbers and really about her vision for creating equity in the world. And our finale is Cheryl Bachelder, and Cheryl says you're going to love what you hear. She's going to tell you what she learned growing up, her way of thinking. She is one of the only families I know ever who has 4 children who are all CEOs. Correct, Cheryl? 4. And she also has a top-selling book, Dare to Serve. While you're on, you may want to just go to Amazon and pick it up. Terrific. And she'll teach you all sorts of things, like one of the big keys with success you'll learn from Cheryl is actually failure and what you take from failure. So for now, I'm going to hand it over to you, Becky. And Becky, you and Cindy, let's take it away and have some fun.
Hey, Robert, thank you so much. Always great to partner with you. And thank you for setting an outstanding foundation. Wow, what a great sort of list of participants who are on the panel today. I'm just eager to learn from all of you, taking the time to prepare with you all. And Robert, just your amazing personal stories and your journey. Thank you so much for giving back today and kind of being that light for other people that are listening today to how did you create that path, right? And how did you run these multi-million-dollar businesses? But personally, I think what we'll cover is, how did you what's your personal journey as well? And I think the more that we can have these conversations, the more it's really going to connect and stick with other people, that it's possible. So thank you for that, so much for all the work you're doing and support. So I'd love to just kind of kick it off with Cindy. Cindy, welcome so much. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Becky and Robert and Edie.
Yeah, well, listen, you've certainly made a career path in many different directions, but also the CEO of Brookdale, which I think is one of the largest, if not the largest, senior living organization in the country. Congratulations for that. Well, we'll talk more about that, but let's just talk about your personal career journey for a minute. There are highs and lows, right, in this path, but also it's how do you distinguish yourself and how do you maintain? I get this question a lot from aspiring women leaders who want to be in the executive level or even just that senior director, C-suite. How do you maintain that sense of authenticity and your true self through this journey? Because I think it's remarkable, the executives who are women who get to the top really know thyself and they're able to maintain that, right? And use that as a key differentiator. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. And Becky, let me just say that I feel very lucky to be part of Brookdale. Brookdale is the largest in senior living. We are in the healthcare industry where 80% of healthcare decisions are made by women. And Edie asked us to talk about the numbers. So I'm going to tell you that 44% of our board members are women, 11% women of color. We have 61% of our VP roles that are held by women, and 73% of our community, agency, and corporate office roles are held by women, the leadership roles. So we are really an organization that is great for women. But if you think about choosing a path, I would say choose a path that you're passionate about. And for me, Brookdale Senior Living is very personal. I became a caregiver when my mom had a very severe car accident in middle school, and she almost died. And so becoming a caregiver for her, understanding the challenges that people face, really taught me the importance of taking care of others. And so it's very easy for me to be authentic at Brookdale. We take care of people, and I know the value of that. So I think that's the most important thing. You need to find your North Star, your true north. You need to find a culture that is consistent with your own personal values. We are a culture filled with servant leaders, very much like Cheryl talked about. And it is something that you've got to find a place where you can differentiate yourself. So I love to solve challenging problems. And certainly there is nothing more challenging than the challenges of aging. And so finding something you're passionate about, finding a company that fits with your values, and then finding something important to do in that company. I like to say, focus on what matters most. And again, when you're doing that, it's easy to be authentic.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Cindy, so much for that. And I think let me just expand upon that. I think it's finding your path is finding your purpose, kind of finding your mission and what you love and what you excel in doing. But some folks don't think they have a choice. But, I hear always the story, I'm too busy. Well, busy is a choice, right? And we do have a choice versus that external world to control that. And you are an example who owned that, right? And you championed that. And then you did something that really, I'm sure every day you get up and you're doing something that gives some energy back to you too, because you're really in that sort of mission purpose role. So we all need to roll up our sleeves and do the work on that. If we're finding ourselves kind of churning and not happy, not satisfied, we have so much potential that's not being tapped on, right? So thanks for that reinforcement and giving ourselves permission to really hone in on that. That's particularly important as we kind of create a path forward, after the pandemic, to really find that passion.
Well,
Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
I think you said something really
Go ahead.
important that I just want to highlight. You may not get it right in your first company, in your first job. And so if you found something that's not bringing you joy, that's not bringing out the best in yourself, make a change, right? And if you find yourself being very busy, figure out whether you're busy at things that matter to you or not. And if not, don't do them. Do something different.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. Thanks, Cindy. Robert, I'll turn it over to you. Robert, I think your wireless is going out.
They muted me, boy, that's.
Oh, okay, now you're coming in. That's great. Little technical issue.
So,
Carry on, Robert.
Two parts of the question. One is, what is the advice to people building their network so they could move up to become a CEO, Fortune 500 CEO? But the second part is, day one, once you become CEO, you are now managing the brand, but you're also managing your own personal brand. What advice do you have on that? So on your networks to get there, but then two, on managing your personal brand and the brand of your organization.
So let me start with the question of networks. It's really important to build a network that has a broad skill set that is different than your own. There is no person who has all of the skill sets, all of the answers. I grew up in finance, and so marketing wasn't my first area of expertise. So I needed to find someone to supplement marketing. I'm an introvert, so being able to have somebody who's an extrovert to help with the relationships. We talked about Cindy Kent a little earlier as we were preparing for this. She's an extrovert, so we're a perfect sort of combination. Finding people who are leaders in industries similar to yours, as well as who are leaders in industries that are different than yours. And then really make sure that your network includes people who will be honest to you. My husband is actually a really important part of my network because he's not afraid to tell me when I may not be getting it right. Just a quick story. When the board reached out to me about the CEO position at Brookdale, my first answer was, I don't think so. And my husband said, wrong answer. And now it has been a little over 3 years, and it was a really good piece of advice that he gave me. So having people who will tell you when you're making a mistake before it's too late. And if you think about sort of your company brand and your company reputation, really keep in mind what's at stake. Focus on the mission. That's very easy at Brookdale. We have a focus on helping older Americans live better. And so the health and well-being of our residents, patients, and associates is our top priority. It's our true north. And knowing that is the case, it's very easy to focus on the brand. I think that when it's hard, it's really important to step back and remember why you took the job, why you're doing this work. The jobs at a CEO level and on the way up aren't easy jobs. So you really need to think about why. And for me, it's really about all the lives that we've changed, the positive impact that we've had, the truly life-saving and life-enriching decisions that you make. Look for progress. You know, sometimes you say 2 steps forward, 1 foot back, and really see where you're going, where you want to go, what adjustments you need to make to get there. And then set very clear goals. For us, it's really all about health and well-being of our residents, our patients, and our associates. You know, we have to succeed. And so it's not about whether you're going to succeed, but it's how you're going to do it. So keeping that in mind as you think about your brand and as you need to make adjustments, know that it's not always going to be perfect, but keep focused on the momentum.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cindy, thank you for that. I think sometimes we think the brand will sort of take care of itself, but that's not the case. I self personally woke up one day and realized my brand's not aligned with where the company's gone, or, you know, we're with women's leadership, gender parity consulting, or, you know, the company brand. And so you have to refresh that. And that's so critical because the brand is really the conversation that people have about you when you're not in the room. Right. And so your brand is as good as how people see that. So it's important that we do that work. So thanks for that. You know, you'd mentioned your hard work and the progress you've made with the equity, the diversity within your organization. Congratulations, by the way, for all of you. But what's been your roadmap? What unpack that a bit for us. How have you been able to achieve that? Maybe the word's not the roadmap, but talk about the culture and how you've been able to achieve that progress, and then your sort of vision for the future, how to sustain that.
Well, first and foremost, we build our business one relationship at a time. And it's really important that the organization, as represented by our associates and by our residents, has leadership and a board that looks like them, right? And so that was really the focus for us on creating a diverse and inclusive culture. And it's not just about getting the right leadership, but it's making sure that everyone feels included, that everyone has an equal voice. And so for us, it's a journey. We started at the top of our organization. Before I was appointed to be the CEO, we had a 9-member board. We had 1 female on the board, and everyone was Caucasian. So not the most diverse group. I'm pleased to say that 3 years later, as I said, we've got 44% women, 11% racial diversity, and that's a pretty big change in a short period of time. So we started at the top of the organization. Then what we did is we focused on our senior leadership team. And so we are essentially gender parity at the top of the organization. And a lot of it changes because of the face of your leaders. By hiring leaders who look different, you attract more and more people who are comfortable that you truly value diversity. So for us, it involved talking about diversity, hiring a diverse slate. We use or recruiting from a diverse slate. We use the Rooney Rule, right? So whenever there's an open position, you try to make sure that you've got a wide, diverse candidate list. And we don't start recruiting until you do have that diverse list. That can be a little more challenging than you think sometimes. We've had to tell recruiting firms that we will not recruit, or we won't start interviewing until that happens. We've even had to supplement the list through contacts of our board members and others. And that's really been something that's been very helpful. And then we've had to listen to our organization to see what are the barriers that we don't realize candidates face to join us, and to remove some of those barriers. And that's been something that has been really helpful. We've had to target populations where they're underserved. And then importantly, we are very focused on what is the career progression, because we have great diversity within our organization, and just making sure that it can be represented at every level. And then, of course, pay for performance. We're very proud of the fact that we have equal pay for equal work. And we regularly look at that to make sure that something hasn't gotten out of line. And that is something that I think that people really need to see. If you make a contribution, we are going to value you for your contribution to the organization, and we're going to pay you appropriately.
So sounds like you treat that like a business imperative, right? So that's when it happens. Thank you. Robert.
Absolutely.
So we're now up to Catherine. So Becky.
Well,
Back.
yeah. So Catherine, welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you for all you've done in that financial services industry and being a role model for not only women, but for men too. So we're thrilled to have you be a part of the conversation today.
Thank you. It's just great to be here.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, wonderful. Well, listen, we're all ears. I know you've had a career, you've had a journey like all of us here in the circle, that we'd love to just hear. Give us a few sort of stories or examples of how you have been able to navigate your career. Let's face it, the tech industries can be challenging, the financial services, any industry can be challenging, but it's been difficult for financial services and women in tech. So love to hear a little more about how you've been able to navigate your career. I'm sure you mentor a lot of women, but what are your kind of crown jewels, things you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say for the financial services industry is that we need to be visible. Right. So that's one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to be here, right? To help make this industry visible, to make it visible for women. I think of my growing up, I was born in Washington, D.C. And when I think about the careers that were visible to me, this wasn't one of them. I saw law. My dad was a lawyer in medicine and education and hospitality and lots of other things, but I didn't see this. So I went off to law school and followed my dad's footsteps. And it wasn't until I graduated and I started working with clients that I actually found this industry, because my clients were in this industry. And I learned that I had a much bigger passion for financial markets actually than I did for law. So I made the change. So the first thing we have to do is be visible so that women can find us. And then the second thing, I would just echo what Cindy said. For all of us, whatever industry we're in, we're going to work hard and we want our work to matter. You want to come in with a sense of purpose every day. And people don't always realize that there's a tremendous sense of purpose in the financial services industry. I come into a screensaver that says our purpose is to help our clients succeed in the financial world. And that's not just a screensaver, that's our purpose. It guides us every single day, because we know if we help people have better financial futures, we're going to help them have better futures, and we're going to help the economy have a better future, for heaven's sakes. It's 70% of it is made up of individuals, consumers. And I guess the other thing I would say for people is that I have found in financial services, you can have many careers within a career. And what I mean by that is it's a very broad set of businesses and disciplines. And so if I look at myself today, I'm working with families, individuals and families in wealth management. Before I did that, I worked exclusively with the nonprofit community, hospitals, universities, museums, the organizations that really enrich our lives and take care of us. Before that, I worked with the largest institutional investors in the world, big pension plans, insurance companies. And, all along the way, I've had the chance to work with people who found and run companies and serve, create products for consumers. And so you can have many careers within a single career in financial services. I don't think people necessarily realize that. And I think the key to that is it's curiosity, right? Just constantly learning more, and confidence that as you go along, you're adding skills and you can apply them to new things.
Yeah, it's like, don't always look up, look across and around to see where you can build that portfolio of skills and take a stretch, right? Get out of your comfort zone. Is there any one experience or, piece of advice, Catherine, you got that was kind of, I don't know if it was life-changing, but really helped to, I know I've gotten some of that in my career journey life. Is there anything that stands out for you that was extremely helpful to help you to achieve and be who you are today?
Again, it's very fun to come after Cindy because there was so much wisdom there. And I find we have some things in common. She had an experience as a young person that shaped her career. I did too. So my mom was very suddenly widowed when she was 32 years old. I was the oldest of 3 little kids. This was back in the 1970s. And I watched her go back to work as a school teacher. And I watched her then go back to school to become a librarian, a career that she really loved and stayed with till she was, in her very late 70s. And I watched her have to become responsible for her financial future. And she was very lucky. She inherited a small amount of life insurance. And I watched her, join the investment clubs and all those things. And it just made it so clear to me how important it is that all of us be able to manage our own financial futures. And I know we care a lot about data. What the data says is that 9 of 10 women will be responsible for their financial affairs for some or all of their lives. But just given my own experience, we should assume that it's 10 out of 10. We should just assume that it's 10 out of 10. And, if we fast forward to the future, women are about to disrupt the financial services industry. And I'm just going to say that again because it's really important. Women are about to disrupt the financial services industry, and it's for a couple of reasons. One is, think of the group of women we have collected on this call today, the increasing success that women are having in their careers and generating wealth and financial resources. But the second is demographics. There's $30 trillion of wealth in this country that is owned by baby boomers and older people. And that $30 trillion is about to make its way to the next generations. And of course, we all know women are half of that generation. And so whether it's because of their own personal success or family success that they might benefit from inheriting something, from a parent, women are about to disrupt this industry. And so how do we, the good news is it's happening slowly, right? Most disruptions happen very quickly. This one's happening slowly, year by year. Right. And the way we prepare for that disruption, of course, is people. Right? Clients lead industries. And so we want to look like the people we're going to serve. So I'm delighted to say that my leadership team, 50% diverse by gender and ethnicity, half of our employees in the wealth management division are women, 40% of our vice presidents and above, so our more senior employees are women. So we're working to have the people we need and the opportunities we need. But the other thing that we're changing is our approach, because the data also tells us that women can have less confidence when it comes to making financial decisions. And yet our experience tells us it's not a lack of competence, it can be a lack of confidence. And so we've really changed our approach. And by the way, this works for everybody. This is not tailored to women, to say, all right, if there's a confidence gap for anybody, how do we fill that confidence gap? And we've really thought about our 200 years plus years. Thank you, Robert, for reminding everyone about Eliza Hamilton and how we got started. We've stepped back and said, okay, we've learned a lot over the years. And what are the 5 things that if you get them right, you're going to have a better financial future? And it's investing, it's borrowing, it's spending, it's managing taxes, and it's protecting what you have. And we've built a whole new framework around that and a new set of tools to be ready for what's coming and to help.
Well, that's terrific. And I think you're right. It's a perfect storm now. And if organizations are not looking within to see what the diversity of their town is reaching out to the customers, i.e. women, then there's a good chance they're going to lose that competitive edge, right? I just wanted to talk just one question internally, and I'll turn it over to Robert, but the remarkable, again, all of you, the statistics of your internal talent of women and diversity. Is there one thing that you can say, because a lot of the folks on the call today are wanting to have practical solutions, what they can do to move the needle when it comes to building more diversity, but you need inclusion, right? And so anything you want to share there with us?
Yeah, so I will go back to the data and what have we learned about women in the workplace over the years? And there's some data that really guides us. And by the way, when I'm not responsible for the wealth management division, I have the great fun and privilege of leading our women's initiatives at the company. So I focus a lot on this. The data tells us that women may get their first promotion later. And that matters, right? It gets you on your journey. And the data also tells us that women may not always get the feedback they need. And so sort of armed by that data and leading our women's initiatives here at the company, we've really sharpened our mission to say, yes, of course, we want to create a great network for our women and their allies, but we really want to focus on their career advancement and helping them along the way. And so we've changed our programming. We've demystified, the promotion process to the extent we can. Lots of seminars on that. And in fact, just this morning, I led a session on mid-year reviews for our women, 60 countries around the world, 6,000 joining for this. And because, careers are really made of micro moments, right? And that mid-year review, that year-end review, they really matter. And knowing how to approach it and how to have the conversations you need is really, really important. And I tell our women that there are 2 times a year when the company tells you to put yourself on the top of your to-do list. And it's mid-year and it's year-end. Right? Think of it, if we're really honest, how often do we have a lot of other things on our to-do list, whether it's our company, our clients, our family, others. There are lots of things on the to-do list. And very, very often we might find ourselves at the bottom. And there are 2 times a year when your company wants to put you on the top. And I tell people to make the most of it because those times really matter. They really matter.
Definitely. Looking inward, right? Making the investment in you and for companies being proactive. So I love that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Robert.
Yes.
You?
So thank you, Becky. So Catherine, by the way, the careers are measured in micro moments is a brilliant concept to think of from here on in. I was writing that down while you said that. Here's just the final thing to understand. So we understand if you're talking about $30 trillion of, I think it's about a $75 trillion global economy of being transferred, not counting the derivatives markets. So being transferred, what is your vision of how that could play out in terms of parity and building a better society?
Well, demographics would tell you that we should expect that at least half of that ends up in the hands of women. And then, of course, women are creating their own businesses and wealth and success. And so, it's quite likely that women will control more than half of the financial resources in this country at some point. And that's an amazing thing. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and once that happens, where the dollars go, it's like water. Everything flows past that. Well, anyway, I want to say, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. Tremendous wisdom. And now I'm handing it back to Becky for Phyllis Newhouse.
Hi, Phyllis. Wow, thank you so much. You're just such a rock star. And really, thank you so much for carving out some time here. You have also an amazing, amazing story. Not enough time to capture it all today, but we're going to do our best. But you've had an interesting background as the CEO of Xtreme Solutions, but you had also a great story before that. What do you think are the most, if we look at leadership, which I think leadership has been a passion of yours, you've lived leadership, working, in the military arena as well. But what do you think today? Because I think a lot of organizations are rethinking, shifting their leadership models to align with the realities of today. So it has a relevant context, right? So what do you think are some of the one of most important leadership quality for today for all of us?
Character, qualities. And I'll say this, I remember, my father used to always say, your character will travel with you on your journey. So make sure you're aware of it. And so one of the quotes that I always, when I was in the military, and I used to say this to women, in particular women leaders, is that character is what opens doors. And the moment you find yourself in the room where people are questioning, how did you get in here? Tell them, my character came in before I did and opened the door for me. That, to me, as a leader in this country today, if you have the privilege and you are blessed to lead anything today, it takes character. And to me, I think when you look at CEOs want to take a back seat, they don't know what position to take. Character tells you where you stand at all times. And so that for me would be probably the most important thing a leader must have today.
Right. And I know absolute character is just, it's timeless, but based on the inflection point we are at right now, with so much change, ambiguity, and issues around trust and such too, right? Let's face it, I think it's so important. I guess, I know you've had a lot of focus for women, and we get into that more, but what is one piece of advice, particularly right now, because I think anytime you are going through a disruption or coming off a unprecedented time, things are reset, right? Things can
Right.
shift and change to align with the new realities. So how can women shape and form that? What advice do you have for them?
You know, I would say know where you are in your journey, your life journey and your professional journey, because sometimes you're not in the same place where you can meet and there's an alignment, right? So I'll give you a good example. I think I was talking to a professional athlete who's probably at the transitioning stage of her career. And she said, how do you know as a leader, you know, when you're going through changes and there's disruptions in the industry, how have you been able to pivot as a leader, and how have you been able to pivot personally to transition through change? And I've gone through that. I've spent 22 years in the military, and you know, and I believe that I was absolutely operating in my greatness, and then all of a sudden you step out and then you start a company from scratch, and you're thinking you're just super badass that you can just do it, and you don't realize that, you know, you're not operating on somebody else's money. Now you got to go out and find capital. You got to find strategic partners, and I've gone through many iterations of change, but I think it's about mindset. It's like, are you prepared? What do you see? What does the future look like? As we've gone through, even in my own company, as we've gone through, you know, this last year, we've grown, but we pivoted way before we saw this happening. So we were prepared for that. But also too, I took it on a new venture in the middle of a pandemic. I decided I'm going to do something, had no background, had not been in the industry before, and disrupted a whole industry by stepping in the door. It goes back to the character walked in the room first and opened the door.
And that was when you went into with Xtreme Solutions, right, from the military.
Yeah, and that was the pivot. That was the first pivot. And then this last year, we launched a SPAC, the Special Purpose Acquisition Company. The SPAC, all women led, the first time. And I have to share this with you. All women led SPAC, the management team, the board of directors, all the advisors, all of the investors are all women. The first all women led SPAC. 636 SPACs the day we launched. Not one woman of color had ever done this. Not one woman of color had ever rang the bell on any exchange. Only 21 women in the history of the exchange have ever taken a company public. 21, and only one woman of color. And so again, disruption, I was prepared for it because I had the mindset.
You know, thank you so much for that, Phyllis. You know, when I think of your leadership, I think of having a voice and stepping into it, right? I mean, that just is parallel to some of the things that you're doing and believing in that. So, you know, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, you know, Robert here too, because I know he's eager to have one more question for you today. So thank you.
I think, Phyllis, it's really interesting what you're talking about, character. And we hear about character, but here's the question for everyone listening in who may want to become a CEO. And you've done both. You've been great in technology and military. You've started two, actually, great entrepreneurial enterprises. But character's at the center. What can people do to understand the strengths of their character, what their foundation is, so they look at themselves in the mirror and they could succeed in the next challenge, regardless of the situation?
Wow, I love that question. Like, I'm so eager to answer that question. I'll tell you something. I'm about to jump all over myself right now. Here's something I thought about. What would I want to share with women today, right now, in this moment? You know, when I started this SPAC, Robert, I asked every single woman, got asked this question. I said, if you were playing poker with some of the most skillful poker players in the world, and you have been invited to sit at the table and play poker, and you had a card in your hand that the moment you threw that card out, it was game over. That value card. What is that value card that you would throw out that no way in hell anybody's going to win if the moment you throw it out? And guess what? I said, let me tease you for a moment. I'll tell you what mine is. I said, it's the value card of leadership. No one's going to outlead me. And I said, and then you'll have a sub card called negotiation. If you got to sit on the other side of that table with me, you're probably not going to win. And here's what character says. I know what my value card is. You see, the moment we know the value card, we're not afraid to walk in those rooms. When I walk in a room, I don't have to guess who's leading. People don't have to walk in that room and say, who's in charge? You don't have to guess, because that's the value card I bring. Someone's bringing the value card, the collaborative leader, the inspirational leader, whatever it is you bring to the table. Play that card every day. And no matter who's sitting at the table with you, don't worry about their card. Don't try to play someone else's card. Play your value card. And that's the card people will expect for you as a leader to show up to the table every single day.
There you have it. I'm not supposed to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. ShoulderUp. What is the website if someone wants to find out?
ShoulderUp.com.
Okay. And when you read there, you'll find out all what this is. Thank you so much, Phyllis.
You're welcome.
So our finale now, Cheryl. So Cheryl, you have, it's as I mentioned, like you're the oldest of four, and your story, which we talked about in the past, is so fascinating. Just tell us, growing up, the impact of success, what you really learned that led you on this path. And by the way, it's not just Popeyes, she's also interim CEO of Pier 1 Import. So a lot of background there.
So I build on what Phyllis said. I had a very strong father figure in my life, a very successful father, and his worldview included strong character traits. And so when I look back on the dinner table conversations we experienced growing up, they were very grounded in values. Our family was a family of faith, and so we were taught the principles of our faith around the dinner table and how you put them into play in the workplace. One of them is the dignity of every human being. We talked about things like that at dinner. We also had a strong value around learning, and I call that getting prepared, right? My parents were very concerned about good education, reading good books, understanding ideas and the impact of ideas, and ensured that each of us was well prepared in that sense. And then the family ethic itself, I joke that I never needed to join a women's organization because my two sisters and I had like our own therapy group. And so I think we learned early a lesson that I hope all women are learning today, which is don't go this road alone. The stories that my sisters and I shared back and forth, we were young working mothers coming up the ladder together, and we talked truth to each other, and we helped each other out. We helped figure out how you get from A to B to C. And we do that today. My sister had a career issue just a couple of weeks ago, and 7:05 a.m. call me up, do you know a good lawyer? And so I think the lessons in that: get prepared for the opportunity, lead out of your values, and then go through life in community with other women who can help you navigate the times.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. And when you talk about servant leadership, the whole concept, and your book, Dare to Serve, Becky, could you take it from there?
All right. Well, Cheryl, thank you. I think don't do it alone, right? Have your posse, right? Have your board of directors with you. It's more fun. And I think it's, you avoid, a lot of the challenges that we think we can overcome. So encouraging that for these women, I think, and attendees is great. You took time to write a book. I'm not sure when you had time to do that. I believe you have 4 kids, lots of things going on in your life, but it's called Dare to Serve. It really is about, servant leadership, right? And so maybe you could share with us what inspired you to write this book, and why is it so important today? The essence of your book, the key messages, why is this so important today as we look at leadership today?
Well, I think in short, the reason I wrote a book is I found the leadership approach of culture to be an effective for me at least, and that led me to do a lot of research and homework. For me, servant leadership aligned well with my values. It aligned well with the industry where I work, the hospitality industry, and yet it wasn't the central thesis of leaders in our industry. The subtitle of my book is How to Drive Superior Performance by Serving Others. So I wanted people to recognize it as a legitimate approach to leadership that creates performance results. And in the book, we tell the story of the turnaround of Popeyes, where we measured our success by the success of our franchise owners. And in doing so, drove the value of the enterprise from an $11 stock to a $79 stock on the day of the sale. We created a place where the people who invested the most thrived the most. And oh, by the way, everybody else benefited from that, including our shareholders. And so the message I think that exists for women in that is to be confident and secure in our leadership approach. For me, that was servant leadership. That's what worked and created an environment that I felt lined up with my values and led to other people being very successful. And I wanted to create just one case study of that to encourage others to do the same. And by the way, since I began that conversation over 15 years ago, there are quite a few more people talking about conscious capitalism, servant leadership, people first over profits. I mean, there is a real vibe now of people saying there's another way to make a nickel without it being at the expense of the people who've been entrusted to our care. So that's what I'm excited about. Is I think it's now a legitimate conversation that may serve many women well if you find it aligned with your own perspective and values.
Well, I'm eager to get the book and start reading it over the weekend, Cheryl. Thank you for that thought leadership and just reinforcing, an important element, which I think you're right, is evolving. The servant leadership is even, I think, becoming so more critical. The last piece, which I'm going to turn over, Robert, is really, marketplace and industry around restaurant business. So Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Becky. And this is a question, Cheryl, I think everyone listening in and everyone when we broadcast this out will want to know. Obviously, the whole restaurant industry was decimated by COVID. What's the future? What are the winners going to be doing differently?
Well, I think it's a wonderful question about the future. Some restaurant companies did brilliantly during COVID. I sit on the board of Chick-fil-A today, and they've managed it extremely well to serve their customers during a difficult time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, many family-owned restaurants, full-service restaurants, have struggled mightily. So I think coming out of this challenge, innovation is going to be a driver. Do you truly adapt to the new ways people want to experience the restaurant, both live in person and in the delivered and at-home formats? I think staffing is a whole new challenge. The restaurant industry will be understaffed by as much as 20% going into this fall. That is going to lead to companies who are going to do well in that environment will be taking good care of their people. And doing all the things that lead to retention, right? Which is you pay people well, you create a place where they grow and thrive and develop, and share the workload effectively among each other. So a thriving workplace. And the third thing, and I just saw this last week, robotics are coming to the restaurant industry. We may not love microwave food or robotic prepared food, but it is coming. Because it's going to be one of the innovative ways restaurants handle the volume that they can no longer handle through personal service.
Interesting. Well, I thank you very much. Great success for you. I want to thank this panel, but before you go, right now we're going to hear the sum up from the one and only Celestra. But she'll have to unmute herself first.
I think the host had to do that, but I think you can hear me now?
Absolutely.
Wow, I just found that to be extremely informational and inspirational. Thank you so much to the panelists and the moderators for putting on this session. We don't have much time, but just a few things stick out in my mind and how I can apply that to my work life. First of all, from Cindy, Choose a path you are passionate about. Make sure the culture of your organization is aligned with your values. I actually had to learn that the hard way, so it's a good reminder. Find an important role to do in your company. And then build a network with broad skill sets that complement your own skill sets, and make sure that your network is very honest with you. And then from Catherine, I learned about finding a sense of purpose in all you do at work, but also in the financial services. There are many careers that you can have within the industry or even within your own company. And put yourself, I like this one, put yourself on the top of your to-do list. And so often women, especially working moms, put ourselves on the bottom of the to-do list. So we need to flip that script. In terms of Phyllis, of course, we can all agree that your character will travel with you from your grandpa, I believe, or your dad, and then your character will open doors. I think that is so true. It is indeed your value card. And then also to know where you are on your journey and be prepared, even with disruption coming. And lastly, from Cheryl, don't go on this road alone. And this is so much of what WBC is about, right? Leverage the community of women, your sisterhood, your broader sisterhood, and be confident and secure in your own leadership approach. So thank you so much. These are really great words of wisdom that I can take from here on. I will now turn it over to Edie, who's going to have the final words.
I think can every one of us stop and really appreciate the wisdom of these 4 CEOs, because it's values, and the values are leading to profit. But it's purpose before profit. And we're working right now on a big film called Why is Mona Lisa Smiling, with Fortune magazine and a group of mostly male CEOs. So they have got to all listen and make sure your voices are on. So you all talked about character and leadership like none other, but you talked about gender parity, and you also talked about the economics of what it means. And so whether Catherine Keating said women are about to disrupt the financial industry, but you each talked about the role of women in terms of disrupting where we are, where we're going. And when you talked about the SPACs, Phyllis, and is clearly, and you were the first Black woman to really go into the stock exchange. You all are first, all right? And as women leading companies differently, and with that propelling their profits, I just think we are grateful to salute you. We're going to encourage thousands of people to really listen to the recordings. So it just is extraordinary. And we just like to say, please give us the chats, give us your feedback to Robert, Reiss, to Becky SHAMBAUGH, and to Jose Celester. We thank you. But as we look at the screen with Cindy and Cheryl and Phyllis and Catherine, you've all taught us so much about getting to profits because of your character and because of your leadership and because of being really different as you really embrace others upward. And we're very appreciative. I think we're all going to encourage you about our summit in September. We look forward to really continuing to change the numbers. And thank you for teaching us about servant leadership. I think we've got 2 or 3 books new to add, which we will share with the recording. But to all of you, just thank you so much. We want to go back and listen to your advice and counsel. All right, so if Lorena wants to just open up the lines to the speakers as we say goodbye to everyone, is just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant, brilliant, right?
Thank you so much. You're all so inspirational. I learned a lot today.
Me too. Cheryl, I have 7 sisters.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, it's